The Renaissance period began in Europe as a movement to revive classical antiquity as well as humanist ideals. These ideas were applied to philosophy, literature, and art. The movement in art and architecture began in the late 13th century with artists like Martini, Giotto, and Duccio. The purpose of this video is to show the evolution of art and architecture transformed in the Renaissance period, noted for its complex spatial structures, figures showing fascinating facial expressions, and storytelling. Masaccio's tribute money in the Brancacci Chapel of the Santa Maria del Carmine, painted in the 1420s, is an example of early Renaissance painting techniques being explored. The Brancacci Chapel became an essential place artists throughout the Renaissance visited to learn from these techniques. Masaccio's natural landscape uses atmospheric perspective in the background, and in the foreground uses linear perspective to naturally depict the building. He was likely able to show accurate architecture, as it is suspected that he studied under Brunelleschi, a famous architect of the time. Portraying figures and architecture accurately in art was of increasing importance during the Renaissance. One of Fra Filippo Lippi's most prominent works was the Annunciation painting. It adopts Netherlandish art techniques as it engages viewers through the metaphoric representation of features. Lippi uses the landscape to symbolize the chastity of the Virgin, as the background is white and vivid within an enclosed garden. Lippi improves the concept of perspective with a greater sense of realism through the architecture and background to create a sense of depth. Furthermore, Lippi introduces the idea of engaging viewers as the angel on the far left appears to gaze directly at the viewer, inviting the audience into the narrative. Also, Lippi employs a trick on the viewer's eye as the glass vase at the corner is painted right at the edge of the canvas, breaking the boundary between the canvas and the viewer. Donatello's landmark work was his bronze statue of David. This work signals the return of the nude sculpture in the round figure. It was the first such work like this in over 1,000 years. It carried elements from the ancients such as contrapposto and the heroic nudity. The sculpture was commissioned by Cosimo de' Medici, who was very fond of Donatello and his works. David stands in a contemplative pose with one foot atop his enemy's severed head. He wears nothing but boots and a shepherd's hat with leaves on top of it. David was a classic work of Renaissance sculpture given its Judeo-Christian subject matter modeled on a classical sculptural type. It was revolutionary for its day. The idea of the life-size nude sculpture in the round evidently took some time to sink in and became an acceptable statue type. With the revival of antiquity came also an interest in classical subject matter. Andrea Mantegna's Battle of the Sea Monsters features the mythical Telchines riding on top of hippocamps and ichthyocentaurs in a violent battle. We see a hag holding a plaque with an inscription Invid, meaning envy. It is believed then that the battle is an allegory to artistic rivalry and the envy that arises in artists. He suggests that competition between artists does not improve the artists, but instead it impedes their creativity. To the Greeks, Telchines are also the pagan creatures of metalwork, a fitting subject for this copper engraving. This piece is the only one known to use two plates for one print, creating a frieze-like scene. The dessous dessous perspective, combined with the moon-like lighting, has the viewer looking up at the piece from the depths of the water. This piece, along with other engravings, inspired later artists, as his engravings were found to have sculptural potential. Leonardo da Vinci was called the father of the high Renaissance art. The way he thought about art set him apart from earlier artists and titled him as a genius by many of his time and today. He studied science and mathematics to make art more real, and later artists would follow this type of study. Da Vinci drew cadavers, made notes on human interaction and emotion, and observed animals and architecture. The use of mathematics and art was most noted in the Vitruvian Man. Da Vinci learned from Vitruvius, an architect who wrote De Architectura, what was considered the manual of architectural theory at the time. Da Vinci learned how the proportions of man could be used in architecture, man's shape being considered most harmonious as it was designed by God. These ideas from Da Vinci's drawings would be translated in the architecture of buildings and churches, such as Donato Bramante's St. Peter.